Welcome to This Explainer. Look, if you are a student right now, or honestly, if you've ever taken a test in your life, I can almost guarantee you know this exact sinking feeling. You walk out of the exam hall, take a huge breath, and think, yep, I absolutely nailed that. You felt so prepared, you studied for weeks. But then the results come back and you're staring at a grade that makes zero sense. You're just left asking yourself, how on earth did I lose so many marks when I knew the answers? It's a wildly frustrating universal experience. But today, we're gonna fix it. Let's just validate that frustration right out of the gate. When you lose marks on a topic you studied extensively, it is rarely an issue of intelligence. Seriously, it's almost never because you're just not smart enough. What we're actually looking at here is a mechanical failure in technique under pressure. The gap between what you know in your head and what you score on the paper is really just a matter of execution. So, here's our roadmap to diagnose and solve these exam day pitfalls. We'll be hitting the illusion of competence, decoding the question, structuring the perfect answer, time and stress management, and finally, preparing like a pro. Let's get right into it. Part 1. The illusion of competence. Educational psychologists point out a massive trap here called the illusion of competence. You see, our brains are incredibly good at tricking us. You stare at a textbook you've highlighted, you read over your perfectly organized notes, and your brain goes, yep, I recognize this. We mistake that warm, fuzzy feeling of familiarity for actual mastery. But recognition is passive. Pulling that information out of your brain under timed, stressful conditions, that's deep retrieval, and it's a completely different mental process. Think about it like this. On one side, we have passive recognition, which is your rereading and highlighting. These methods feel super productive, right? You spend 3 hours color-coding your notes, and you feel like a studying machine. But the research shows this yields incredibly poor long-term retention. On the flip side, you've got deep retrieval, active recall, spaced repetition, sitting down with a blank sheet of paper and timed past exams. This is the uncomfortable, heavy lifting of studying. If your preparation doesn't mirror the actual discomfort of the exam room, you are absolutely falling for the illusion. Let me give you a real-world example of how this plays out. Picture a student who understands photosynthesis perfectly. They know the inputs, the outputs, the entire chemical process. They sit down for the exam, spot the word photosynthesis, get super excited, and write down a flawless textbook description of the process. And they lose the marks. Why? Because the exam didn't ask them to describe it. It asked them to evaluate its importance in an ecosystem. Just having the core knowledge isn't enough. You literally have to apply it exactly how the examiner demands. Which brings us nicely to part 2, decoding the question. This is where so many marks just vanish. Under pressure, our eyes naturally want to skim. We hunt for familiar nouns and totally ignore the command words. Look at how different these are. If a question says describe, the examiner literally just expects you to list characteristics or steps. If it says explain, they want the how and the why, the mechanisms. But if it says evaluate, now you have to provide pros, cons, and a final judgment. Miss a tiny nuance like a command word, and you will end up brilliantly answering a question the examiner never even asked. So the trick here is that we have to force our brains to hit the brakes. I want you to try this 5-step method every single time you tackle a big question. Step 1, read it normally. Step 2, physically underline those command words. Step 3, rephrase the question in your own words in your head. Step 4, jot down a super quick plan on some scrap paper. And step 5, after you finish drafting your answer, read the question one more time just to make sure you actually stayed on topic. It's the ultimate safety net against skimming. All right, part 3, structuring the perfect answer. Let's talk about how this translates into your actual writing. The best ideas in the world are going to lose marks if they're hidden from an examiner who is speed marking hundreds of papers. You have to serve the answer on a silver platter. Enter the Peel framework for your essay-style questions. Point, evidence, explain, link. State your main point clearly. Back it up with a specific piece of evidence. Explain exactly why that evidence proves your point, and then link it right back to the original question. It guarantees you're building an airtight chain of reasoning. Now, if you are dealing with math or science exams, the rules are slightly different, but just as critical. In these subjects, marks are heavily weighted toward your method. If you do the math in your head because it's super simple and just write down the final correct answer, you are literally throwing away method marks. Show every single step neatly. Label your units. Draw a big, obnoxious box around your final answer so they can't possibly miss it. Never skip a step. Make it completely impossible for the examiner to misinterpret your work. Moving into part 4, time and stress management. Okay, 1.2. Burn this number into your memory. It stands for 1.2 minutes per mark.
Think about it. In a standard 2-hour exam, which is 120 minutes, that's worth 100 marks, you have exactly 1.2 minutes to secure each mark. So if you spend 15 minutes agonizing over a 5-mark question early on, you are actively stealing time from yourself later. You'll end up leaving easy, guaranteed marks totally blank at the end of the test. Time management isn't just watching the clock, it's highly strategic allocation.
And we really need to talk about the biology of what happens when that clock is ticking and panic sets in. You know those careless mistakes? They are rarely true carelessness. When you're stressed out, your body releases cortisol. This biological response actively blocks your focus and shuts down your working memory. So that terrifying feeling of going blank is a totally natural physiological reaction. Add in sleep deprivation, which stops your brain from consolidating memories, and a lack of physical stamina to sit through a massive paper, and of course you're going to make errors. The cure? Deep breathing to lower that cortisol, getting actual sleep, and doing full-length practice runs to build endurance.
Finally, part 5, preparing like a pro. Check out the difference here. On the left, we've got ineffective preparation, cramming the night before, clinging to summarized study guides, and completely avoiding the topics you know you're bad at. But on the right, that's professional preparation. It means interleaving your topics so your brain practices switching gears. It means sitting down and taking full mock exams under quiet, strictly timed conditions. And crucially, it means rigorous error analysis. Seriously, if you aren't doing past papers and comparing your answers to the official mark schemes, you are flying completely blind. You have to know what they want before you walk in the room. There's a quote from the source material that absolutely nails our core thesis today. It says, "The difference between good and excellent students often lies in technique, mindset, and deliberate practice, not raw intelligence." I love that. Top-tier results are a matter of applied strategy. You really don't need to be a born genius to ace an exam. You just need to respect the mechanics of the test itself. So, I'll leave you with this final thought. Are you going to let the illusion of competence steal the marks you've worked so hard for? Or are you going to master the technique? The choice is entirely yours. My challenge to you this week is to grab a past paper, set a timer, and grade yourself ruthlessly against the official scheme. Find out exactly where your technique is failing. Transform all that hard-earned knowledge into the grades you actually deserve. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and happy studying.